So before I start this video, I'm very sorry for the lighting and the shadow you're going to see behind me because I'm filming in a different location than I usually do. My room has been taken over by my cousin while I've been away, so I don't really have a space of my own to film, unfortunately. Plus my books, we had to fix my carpet, so my books are just a mess on my bookshelves anyway, so I would have to like fix all that before I could film in there anyway. So this is what we're doing. I don't have extension cords, so I couldn't bring my lighting close enough to like look good. So again, sorry, but this is just what it's gonna look like for this video, and I'm filming another one after this. I have been really taking a hiatus, I feel like, for the past couple weeks from BookTube. Not that I post that many videos, but I try to do one a week and I just haven't been in the mood. It's been midterms and I've just really gotten into this like life slump the past couple weeks. I was in school for 7 weeks straight and it was just getting down, like the last couple weeks were getting down to the point where I was like, I'm just done. I just need a mental health break from school. So finally getting that. We're gonna film some videos. I don't know when I'm going to end up posting these. I'm going to try, because they're all for Victober, I'm going to try to get them done. Today I'm going to be doing my long-term Victorian TBR, which basically is going to be just all the Victorian books that I've most been interested in, that I hope to read in the next couple years. There are definitely more than this that I've heard of that I'm interested in, but these are the ones that are most on my mind, that I'm really excited to read. How I'm organizing this is by author, so I'll mention the author, and then there's one that will have 4 books by that author that I really want to read, but the rest will have like 1 or 2, maybe 3 that I'll talk about. And yeah, so let's just get into this video. The first author I'm going to mention, we're just gonna get out of the way, it's Thomas Hardy. If you have seen my videos, you know I love Thomas Hardy, and I really just want to read all of his novels. However, there are 3 that I'm most interested in at the moment that I haven't read yet, or I'm not currently reading, because I'm technically currently reading a Thomas Hardy. But the first one that I'm really interested in reading for him is Desperate Remedies, which honestly just sounds so dramatic. It's actually his first published novel, and it's about this girl who like is in love with this guy and he's in love with her, but he is actually betrothed to another woman that he doesn't love. She ends up taking a job as a lady's maid for this kind of kooky old lady, and she ends up also getting to know this lady's nephew whose wife died in a mysterious fire, and that just sounds like great, like Victorian soap opera almost. And so I really just want to read this for the entertainment value pretty much alone. Next, I have here Jude the Obscure, which I've kind of been back and forth about how interested I am in it, just because I've heard a variety of different things about it. This one follows, this is his last published novel, and he got a lot of criticism for it, as well as the previous novel, Tess of the D'Urbervilles. So after he got that, he kind of was like, you know what, I'm just gonna write poetry, I'm done writing novels. But this one is about, I want to say it's about a man and a woman who end up just living together without being married, being in the Victorian era, and how they are treated because of that. And so yeah, I don't know much more than that, but I've heard a lot of people really enjoy it. I know other people found it a little more boring. It is also a tragedy, which I just love Thomas Hardy's tragedies, so I really want to just devour this at some point. And then the third one I don't have with me, it's actually down at school, but that is A Laodicean. This one I'm mostly interested in for the sake of the main character, who is the Laodicean, so named in the title. Basically, she inherits this castle and gets the help of an architect to try to fix it up, and she starts to fall for the architect, but there's also, I think, a soldier, I want to say, that she has feelings for. But the character herself is very similar in her beliefs to Thomas Hardy, which I find very interesting, as a Laodicean, if you don't know, is basically someone who is pretty apathetic towards religious belief. I don't want to say agnostic, it's kind of similar to agnosticism, but more like they just don't know what to believe. There's just so much, and so they kind of develop this like fear of being wrong, and so there's just a lot of ambiguity. I struggle with pronouncing that word. But anyway, in their beliefs, not only religiously but politically, and that's very reflective, as I said, of Thomas Hardy, which is why I'm interested in this one. Plus, I haven't heard much about this one, so I don't know if it's just kind of like people are in the middle of the road with this novel, or if they don't really like it, but not enough to like talk about it. I don't know. So we'll see. Next, I have the great Charles Dickens, and this is the one I have 4 novels for because he's just written a lot of well-loved books. So we're just gonna run through those really quick. First of all, Our Mutual Friend, which I don't know much about. I know that there's a murder involved and a lot of different characters that are great, and that's all I really need to know. Also, all of the books I want to read by him are huge except for one. They're so intimidating, but yes, that. I also really want to read Dombey and Son, which I know follows the daughter of Dombey and just how her father wants a boy because he's going to take over the business, and when he has a daughter, he doesn't really treat her as well and kind of ignores her, and what's that like for her. I also really want to read Little Dorrit, which also follows a young girl who, because her father's in debtor's prison, she has to work and support herself and her family. And then I also really want to read A Tale of Two Cities, which is the shortest of this grouping. But I've just heard a lot of good things from people I know personally about this. I've heard mixed things from like people on BookTube and stuff, but from people I know, they tend to like it. So, plus I love the French Revolution, so, and this follows that, so I'm really interested to pick that up at some point. Next, I have George Eliot, and George Eliot is a really intimidating author to me, but I do have a couple of her books that I'm really interested in. She just has a very, kind of a tricky writing style. I haven't read anything by her before, but I've read like the first paragraph of some of her books and stuff just to get a feel. Her writing style is just a little bit tricky, so I don't know when I'm going to read her because I'm very intimidated by her, but the first one I probably will read by her is Daniel Deronda. This, I don't really know completely what this is about, like with all of these, but I know that there's a woman who's a little bit selfish, and there's this man who I want to say she's interested in him, he might be interested in her too, but he's a very nice, good man. And so kind of switching those like stereotypical gender roles from the Victorian period of like the woman being the pure, innocent, good, moral character and the man being a sinful guy, and having that switched a little bit I think will be really interesting. And I know people who don't love George Eliot as much do enjoy Daniel Deronda, so I feel like this is a good place to start. Also, I really want to read Middlemarch someday, but that one's huge and I've seen it on lists for one of the most difficult novels to read ever, so we'll see if I ever get to that one. I'm sure I will someday. I feel like it might end up being one of my like intimidating one book a year that's like super intimidating to me books that I've been doing, but yeah, I do really want to read it. Next, I'm going to talk about Anthony Trollope, who I had never heard of until BookTube, but I am very interested in his stuff because I've heard that he writes a lot about like marriages and struggles in marriage, which is a topic I really like studying in the Victorian period as well. So, the first book that I will probably read by him, I don't know for sure, but it's the only one I own, so it's probably going to be my starting place, but that is The Way We Live Now, which I know is kind of a social criticism of the current Victorian times when this was written, and a lot of the scandals and manipulative political figures and stuff like that. I don't know much more than that. I don't want to know much more than that. It is a hefty book, but so is the other book I want to read by him, which is He Knew He Was Right, which specifically focuses on a marriage that is struggling. So I'm very interested again in this topic, so I really want to read this. Next I have Wilkie Collins, which I just finished The Woman in White and really loved it, and the other book I have by him that is honestly the only other one I've really heard of by him. I feel like I have heard of other ones by him, but I just haven't heard them enough to remember what they were. But that is The Moonstone. This follows a mystery of a missing moonstone, this great artifact, I guess, that has been stolen, and it seems good. I really liked Wilkie Collins' writing. I also think this is actually a detective novel, which is a little different from The Woman in White, and I'm interested to see how I feel about this slightly different type of mystery by Wilkie Collins if I like it as much or not as much. So then I have George Gissing, which I've heard compared to Thomas Hardy in his like tragic elements throughout his stories and stuff, which I love Thomas Hardy, so I definitely want to read something by George Gissing. And the one I'm most interested in that I actually own, but it's still at school, is The Odd Women, which follows basically in London at this time. There were more women than men, and so all these women who had been raised knowing that their goal in life, their purpose in life was to get married and have a family, can't because there's not enough men to go around. And so it follows, I think, 1 or 2 women who don't get married, are unable to. One woman who ends up like really being afraid of having that life, and so she ends up getting married but ends up in a really unhappy relationship. And I think there's one that's like really wanting to get married and looking for a guy. I could be wrong, but I think that's generally what it is. And again, that idea of women at this time as well as marriage and Victorian ideals of marriage are very interesting to me. So I'm really looking forward to reading this at some point. Next, I have an author that I honestly, there's this one and another one on my list. I don't really know what other books they've written at all, but I have at least one of their books each that I really want to read. So for this one, it's William Makepeace Thackeray. Wow, that was a mouthful for me to say. And that book is, of course, Vanity Fair. I honestly don't know much about this book. I've heard a little bit. I know it's pretty dramatic and it's this woman who's really trying to raise herself in society. Other than that, I know nothing, and I'm going to keep it that way. Next, I'm going to talk about Elizabeth Gaskell, who is very, very well loved on BookTube, in the classics side of BookTube, but I haven't read anything by her, and so I really feel like I need to. So first of all, of course, I feel like I'll probably start with North and South because this is probably her most popular. I have seen the BBC miniseries version of this and really, really loved it. So I feel like I'll really like it. My mom actually just read this pretty recently and enjoyed it as well. So excited to pick that up. The other book by her I'm really interested in is Ruth, which I've heard compared to Tess of the D'Urbervilles, which is one of my favorite books of all time, as it follows a fallen woman, although I've heard that it has a happier ending than Tess. So I'm very interested to see how I feel about that comparison, since I love Tess so much and I've read it a couple times. Yeah, so I really want to read that. I also think that one's a little bit one of her shorter ones. I could be totally wrong about that. Sometimes I see books on BookTube and think they're a lot shorter than they actually are in person. But anyway, next we'll go into the Bronte sisters. So first of all, Anne Bronte, I had just recently read The Tenant of Wildfell Hall and absolutely loved it. Definitely one of my favorites of the year. And so I really want to read Agnes Grey, which is her other book, and hopefully I'll be able to read that this next year because I just really, really love The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and I want to see if I could count Anne as a new favorite author if her other book is equally as good. And then I have Charlotte Bronte, and the book I'm most interested, I've read Jane Eyre, so of her other 3 novels, the one I'm most interested in is probably Shirley, which is strange. I feel like I hear more about Villette, which I'm also interested in reading, but something about Shirley has drawn me in, and I kind of have a feeling I may like Villette better, but Shirley just is the one most drawing my attention right now. So, and then last but not least is Geraldine Dewsbury. This is the other one, like William Makepeace Thackeray, that I don't know anything else she's written, but I know she has written The Half-Sisters, which follows half-sisters, one of which is legitimate and the other is not, and how those facts about themselves feed into the rest of their lives. And it sounds so good and interesting to me, and I think it will be interesting to read a book about focused on sisters from the Victorian time period. Alright, so that is it. Again, there are so many other books I would love to read at some point, but these are the ones that have most been on my radar recently, and I hope to get to in the next year or two. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!